Howdy, I'm Gray Pilgrim. Well, a subscriber of mine asked me about this. Oh, come here. Yeah, there. A subscriber asked me about this. So I thought I'd give a little nutshell history lesson about the subject. If you want more information about this, there's some excellent books out there. Or if you look out at YouTube, look for the 11 Bang Bang channel and Garrett Woods and his discussion of Colt revolvers. And look at the earlier ones for the earliest days of the Colt revolver and progression through the later, slightly later ones. But in a nutshell, this book, which is a really good book on Colt revolvers, this picture is of a Colt Patterson. Well, in the 1840s, Colt contracted with a fellow in Patterson, New Jersey, who was a gun maker, and he showed him his design for this newfangled new thing called a revolver. And they started making them. Well, Colt didn't have much money to push forward this idea, so he did some weird things to make money. He went around carnivals all over the Midwest, billed himself as Dr. Colt of Calcutta, and did demonstrations of nitrous oxide. Now, and that was how he was making his loot. And he sent his money off to Patterson to make some more guns that they would sell. Anyway, the company went under. It was a flop. So he went bankrupt. But meanwhile, back in the Seminole Wars, there were several wars taking place in the 1830s, early 1840s, and one of them involved a bunch of guys from Texas. And these guys, well, back then, all of the guys carried a single-shot pistol. I think I got one up there somewhere. Yeah, hold on a second. Let me show you. They would carry something sort of like, oh, come on, you. Come on. Come, get off the wall. There. They would carry their carbines and something like this. So what you do is you'd shoot your carbine at the attacking Indians, and then one shot from your pistol. And then while you're busily trying to reload, the Indians go, aha, he's shot two rounds. Go get him, boys. And so they'd come up with their bows and arrows and just pepper all of you, and you all die. Well, these guys figured that out, and they had this new Patterson newfangled thing, which was in 31 caliber. And they would fool those Indians because those are 5 and 6 shots. So they'd have a couple of those on them, so when the guys came back up after the bang bang, then they go bang, 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 and kill them all. And after a few of these kind of attacks, the Indians learned, stay away from these guys. They're Texans. Well, anyway, one of those fellows, well, two of them, a fellow named Coffee Hayes was the sort of leader. And another one, he had a captain under his command whose name was Samuel Walker. And Walker was commissioned to go off to New York and find this Washington, and find some money, and find this fellow named Colt who had made this Patterson pistol. And he found Colt, and Colt said, sorry, the business has gone under. And he says, well, can you revive it? I want you to build me a revolver. Well, he and Colt sat down and redesigned this Patterson. What Walker wanted was something that was big enough to shoot a horse out from underneath a troop, and something that was 6-shot, and that he could arm all of his company with 2 of them. And so they would have their carbines and 2 of these things, and that means they'd have 13 shots before they had to reload. That would seem like a pretty dang good idea to Colonel Colt. So that's Sam Colt. And so they sat down and designed this thing, and Colt ended up making, I think, 1,100 of them. What he did is he commissioned it with Eli Whitney Jr. at Whitneyville to make 1,000 of them. But he commissioned 1,100. The War Department had awarded him enough money to make 1,000, So sly businessman that Colt was, he got 100 more, and he used those for presentations or to sell to civilians of one kind or another. But anyway, take a look down here. Ooh. These two on the side here, these are both Colt Walkers, as they became known. Colt Walker replicas. One of them is by Army San Marcos, and the other is by Umberti. The difference is the size of the arbor on the two. I mean, that's the main difference between them. But just for a comparison, these are horse pistols. They were meant to be mounted in a saddle on the side of a horse, and you couldn't carry them as a belt gun. I know Josie Wells did, but in the movie. But a little known fact: the two guns that Clint Eastwood carried in that movie were actually movie props made of aluminum. These are were made of iron, and that created a problem later. But regardless of that, these are too dang heavy to carry on your belt, unless you want your pants going down somewhere around your ankles all the time. And as an example, a Colt that was almost contemporary with these things is this one. This is the 1849 Pocket, which was really the loved gun of the 49ers going over to the Goldfields. But you'll see that the difference in size is ginormous to little. This is a 31. This one's 44. The reason it's so massive is, like I said, it was made out of iron. Well, iron just doesn't have the strength. Most of these things that went off to Texas, that's where Colonel Walker, or Captain Walker was in Texas. And he wanted to arm his Texas Ranger boys with these things. Well, most of the ones that went out there, they ended up blowing up. Well, a lot of them did. And they ended up in use, and they really committed, or they worked well. They made a lot of these. They made a lot of victories, in spite of them blowing up, and very nice pistol. And if you were in Colonel Colt's, Captain Walker's troops, you'd have two of these, one on each side of your holster, of your saddle, that you'd pull out and use. And against the Mexicans, it did just as well as it did against the Indians. Well, Colonel Colt, sitting back in now in Hartford, I think, is where he based his new company. What he did was shrewdly, he went to Eli Whitney and said, okay, I know you're not making these anymore, but you've got all the tooling for them. I'd like to buy that tooling from you. So he bought all the tooling from Whitney, and then he took those and set them up in Hartford and started making them again. But he didn't make these. Instead, he made this. That's called the Colt Dragoon. Again, a facsimile. I think it's no birdie. The difference here is these things take 50 grains of powder behind that ball. Well, they technically, with a round ball, you can actually squeeze 60 into it. Don't. I've done it once, and it is the most powerful handgun you have ever shot, period, bar none. Don't ever shoot 60 out of these. And these are not made out of the soft iron of the originals. These are made out of good steel. But anyway, this is called the Colt Dragoon. It only holds a maximum of 50, and it's just a little better made. And it's a little less powerful, just a little bit less powerful than the original Walker. And this is this was a really prized gun up through the Civil War. By the way, this is 1847. I think this is about 1848 or 1849, somewhere around there. I'm not as clear on the history of the dates as somebody like Garrett Woods would be, because he's really studied this. But anyway, taking it a little further down the historical road, regardless of the 1851, the 1860, all of the various models of Colt pistols through the Civil War. Near the end of the Civil War, The Union was always looking to anybody and everybody to buy extra guns because they were running out of guns and they needed guns like there was no tomorrow. I mean, so they were buying everything from Stars to Remingtons to Adams revolvers from England to everything. And they went to anybody and everybody who said, I can make some guns, and said, okay, make some. Here's a commission for a few thousand. Well, one company that they went to was Rodgers and Spencer. And Rodgers and Spencer said, okay, we can make them. And they did. And they got them delivered right about in time for Appomattox, meaning the end of the war. So the government said, well, we commissioned to get these done, so here's a check for what you've delivered so far. Don't make any more. Rodgers and Spencer said, fine. We made the guns, we made the profit. Have a nice day, and went back to whatever they wanted to do after that. But the Rodgers and Spencer's gun, and here is an EMF copy of it. It's perfect in every line about the original Rodgers and Spencer. All of these that were put into government warehouses ended up being bought by a fellow named Francis Bannerman, and he sold them in his catalog for dirt cheap. I mean, for like $5 on the 25 that the government paid for them or something like that. People say that this was the absolute high watermark of the black powder revolver. And I can understand it. This is sort of a copy of the original Whitney revolver / Remington, but it's not a copy. It has some innovations of its own, and it's a good rifle and revolver, excuse me. But the other interesting thing about it that another YouTuber named Blackie Thomas finally figured out, this is a Dragoon in terms of how much powder will fit in this cylinder. This will hold 50 grains. This is as powerful as a Dragoon, but being that it's not a open top, it's actually got a top strap on it. Being that it's look at the throw on that hammer. Look at the throw on this hammer. This hammer works better than that hammer. Sorry, Colonel Colt, it just does. This thing fits in the hand. It's much more ergonomic. This one feels like you're picking up a crowbar. The sights are built into the top strap, not into the edge of the hammer, and it's actually even got a lighter trigger. The Rodgers and Spencer is by far the best black powder revolver ever made, in my opinion, and in the opinion of many people. But anyway, this thing was made by EMF, or it was sold by EMF. I think it was made by Army San Marcos. And it's just marked Rodgers and Spencer, Utica, New York on it. And serial numbers on the base of the butt. No other markings on it other than, made in Spain and black powder only, the usuals. So, but it's a really pretty gun. I like it. I like to shoot it. It's a fun gun to play with. It'd be a good hunting gun. It was sold out at Bannerman's, and for decades after that, and I'm talking about into the 20th century, you'd find these all over the West because, your typical cowboy, he was looking for a gun, and he really couldn't afford a brand new 1873 single action Army, so or even a Smith & Wesson or any of the others that were out there. He wanted something good, quality that he could carry. And Bannerman was selling these, so he bought one. And caps were still available, and black powder was everywhere, and you could just cast your own balls. And these things were just as powerful as any of the more modern things, and they worked like a champ. So these were kept for generations, really, and you'll find them all over the place, originals. But this was a lot cheaper. If you find them these days, the originals, you'll be finding them at like Rock Island Auction. Back in the 1950s and 60s, you might find them down at the pawn shop. Every now and then you'll find one of these at a pawn shop. These are no longer made. EMF is out of this business, and Army San Marcos is out of business. So, just like the Bannerman's ones, these are unobtainium these days. And, unless you find them in some pawn shop or somewhere, but still, Rodgers and Spencer, in my opinion, the best black powder revolver ever made. Happy trails.